There's so much garbage out there about parenting, and we've learned so much about the psychology of parenting and children and our own brains in the last 20 years, like incredible life-changing things. One of the main things we've learned is what I'm going to teach you about today. And one of the ways I'm going to teach us about it, and even teach myself, who's still learning and growing, is through storytelling. And I'm going to read a little story of one of our members who's actually here. And I'm going to use this little beautiful face to even help us understand the story of what is really going on in parenting. See, what we used to think about parenting and how our parents probably thought about parents and our grandparents and maybe our great-grandparents is, we really focus on obedience, right? Raising good, strong, hardworking, tough, obedient kids. Because that type of kid, makes life more pleasant, makes life more easier for us. It builds a stronger society. On the surface, it makes sense. I know you agree with me, right? But now we know that really, when you think about parenting, you've got to think about attachments and what's called attachment theory. So in all my teachings, you barely ever hear me see this. Maybe I bring it up in the parents club, maybe like once every 3 months. But when you think about parenting and marriage, and you think about these little kids or our older big kids, think about attachment. And one of the best ways I like to teach people about attachment is actually by teaching them about what's called reactive attachment disorder. Reactive attachment disorder is a very, very intense, real thing. And the short version of this is that back in the 80s, Americans were adopting a lot of children from Russia because of the Cold War and communism, and there was all these orphan kids. And so all these loving Americans were like, let's bring these kids here to these loving American homes. Let's change the world by adopting these kids. You actually might even know some of these children. But then what happened was these children in these orphanages, they weren't getting love, Kenzie. No one was holding them. No one was nurturing them. No one was being there for them.
Remember, we already saw that show.
Oh, what show are you talking about?
Remember that new show that came out?
Oh yeah, we did watch a show about orphans and something like that. Was it? Oh, Annie. Annie, right? And we watched the remake of the movie Annie, which is so good. And so essentially what's happening here is that these little babies and these toddlers and these children in these orphanages all around the world, actually it's still happening, and it was really happening in Russia for the sake of the story, they would cry because that's what babies do. And they would cry because they're trying to send a message to their caregivers. I need food, I need comfort, I need a hug, I need to get my diapers changed. And because that's what normal, healthy babies do. And in a healthy relationship, then the parents, the mother, the father, they would come, the grandparent, they would give attention to the child. And this is all changing the child's brain, essentially building attachments with the caregivers and with human beings. Because they think about this, if the babies in these orphanages were crying and then no one came, what would the babies do? What do you think the babies would do? If the babies are crying and no one came, what did they do?
They would crawl over to somebody.
Okay, but what if they're trapped in a crib?
They would try to climb out.
They would try to climb out. And they would probably cry louder, right? They would try to cry louder. I mean, like when you're not getting what you want, don't you cry louder sometimes? I mean, I do. And then what happens still think about this, guys. If you're a baby and you're crying or a toddler and no one comes, what do you do then? You stop crying because you accept. I'm just getting chills thinking about it. No one's coming for me. I can't trust anybody. It's really horrible and sad. And then damage occurs in the child's brain and they end up getting diagnosed later on with reactive attachment disorder. Some of these children would come into these American homes and they would act so violently, so horribly, that Americans started sending these children back to Russia. And so it happened so much that you take this story with a grain of salt, because I'm not an expert historian, that they had to send a law that said you're not allowed to send your children back to Russia. because many of the symptoms I've seen it, I've helped diagnose it. It's very common still, even in adoptive children. Here today, it's really interesting how even some of my clients and friends, I can see that adopted child and some non-adopted birth children, I can see that child, I'm not a doctor, I can't diagnose it. That child has reactive detachment disorder. And so many of these parents, they don't even understand it. So now, what is attachments? Attachments is this, it's these, it happens with your puppy, and it happens with your children. It's this feeling like they can trust us to be there for them. And not just like at the infant stage, like I'm gonna feed you, I'm gonna clean your diaper, but I'm here and I'm safe. And I know you're scared, but I'm gonna be there for you. Like you can lean on me, you can trust me to be there for you in your time of need. Now let me help us all and help even myself translate of how attachment theory and attachment parenting is happening in all of my videos and all of my teaching, and how I am still a wounded teacher. Like I don't have this all figured out. I want to learn about it. I want to teach it, but I myself is struggling with this. So thank you so much, Sweetie Pie, for coming to this meeting. I love you.
Can I grab my stuff?
Yeah, grab your stuff. All right. So I have a member. I have an email from a member, and he's here and he wants to talk to me about this. And here's what I have determined I'm going to do here today. I feel like this is a wise, good decision. I'm going to read you his email to me, because as you know, all members of the Parents Club get to talk to me live in this group, to do live Q&A, live questions that they can email me. You're going to love this. As you listen to this, I want you to see yourself in this story. I see myself, I grew as a man, as a husband, as a father from this question. Because this is like, hey, like, dear Abby, this is like, dear Sean, what do I do? So, Mike, are you here with us today, buddy?
I'm muted, yeah.
All right. Well, hey, man, good to see you. I am going to I've taken out all the names of your family members, and I'm going to read a portion of your letter. And then I'm going to celebrate you. I'm going to coach you. I'm going to do some color commentary, and then we're going to talk. Do I have your blessing to do that? Do you trust me? Are we cool?
Go for it, Sean.
All right, cool. Okay, so here, listen to this story, okay? We've got this awesome dad who's got a really healthy family, healthy relationship with his wife, healthy older son in college. Now he's got a question about his 17-year-old junior daughter. Varsity athlete, big stud. This girl wants to be a doctor, all right? You guys ready for this? Now, as you hear the story, see yourself in the story and see your kids. I'm so excited for this story. Okay, I'm gonna cut out and just read the highlighted parts. Okay, so Sean, my daughter, 17-year-old daughter, asked me last night if she could go to the movies tonight on a Monday, right? Which maybe was a holiday, I don't know. I figured, hey, if she's done with your homework, then you can go out at 7 and go see a movie with your friends. You've been cooped up all weekend, go for it, no big deal. Now my wife asked me today if I know who she's going with. Now remember, parenting is never about what it's about. Your story that you have right now, your situation, is not about what it's about. Look under the surface. Think about the attachments. Think about the fears. One thing I'm seeing in this story is fear, okay? Like any normal, loving mother, the mom is afraid. Who is she going with? I'm afraid. I don't know these people. Well, so the dad says, well, I did ask her today. So the next day he asked her. And she said it's 2 people in her friend group. Okay, cool. All right, their names, we'll call them boy and girl. Well, my wife told me, hey, that boy, it's probably a date. And our daughter has never gone on a date with anyone. And maybe this other girl, she's not even going. But the main question I have for you, Sean, which is not the main question, is how we keep talking to her and us together. And she's starting to make choices, that maybe we don't even agree with. So now we have another fear. So now we have a mother who's afraid, and now we have a dad who's afraid. I'm afraid too. She's going to make choices that out there in her own independence that I'm afraid of. Okay, the plot thickens. You ready for the plot? So my wife has been super strict with her. I think that's her Filipino upbringing, right? Totally, we can all relate to that. We all have racial upbringings, cultural upbringings, And I feel like that's a fair thing to say. It's a loving, normal thing to say. It's okay. And that maybe it might be a good balance with me, being not so hyped for Wall Street. So he's actually complimenting his wife. We kind of balance each other out. I'm a little more loosey-goosey. She's a little bit more on the ball. I love her for that. Good stuff. Now I realize that my daughter should probably start having some relationships, dating relationships before college. So much wisdom in that. So much wisdom in that sentence. But my wife also knows that these dating totally derailed my older son. Remember the fear. Okay, so now they had a painful experience and now they're afraid. They're afraid. So we've got two parents who are very emotional right now and very afraid. And remember, that's really what's going on here. It's not about what this even letter is about. So I'm coaching you, Mike, coaching myself and all of us to look underneath the surface and realize this is why I call it the fear cycle and not the cycle. The plot thickens. Okay? So he's like, yeah, let's have her do some dating. She's a junior. 2 years of dating. We're home. I love that. I teach that. I even, while alcohol is a super sensitive topic, I feel like even personally, I would even prefer my daughters do some drinking around their senior year and talk to me about it. Maybe do it with me if that's what they want to do versus they go off to college like I did with no type of wisdom or education. I know that's a controversial thing, so I'm not advising you to do that. I'm just like talking about fears that I have. All right. So in my son's dating led to some really, really bad consequences. All right. So this is like what parenting is about, right? Our kids trigger us. They remind us of our own childhood. Our older kids make bad choices, so we get afraid for our younger kids. Now, I understand at this point, whatever my daughter will do, she's going to do. And I also know that she's a really good kid, and she's fairly respectful of us. So we want to keep the open dialogue and not alienate her. So this wise man has been kind of sitting under my coaching for about 4 to 5 months. And I hope that, I feel so honored because I see this wisdom in here. Remember, parenting is never about what it's about. And one of the things it is about powerlessness. We feel so powerless with our kids, especially as they get older. And this is what the man is saying. I feel so powerless with this girl. Like, hey, she's going off into her own life, making her choices. I can't control that. And she's got a good foundation, but I'm scared. Remember, this is a girl who wants to be a doctor. She's 17. And so last year, but now here's some more fear. Last year, she did not do well with school. And it took a lot of effort to keep her on track with her classes. Maybe even some summer school. And now adding a boy factor in with everything else could be an issue. Gosh, see, the fear is piling up. This is what we do, guys. This is what we do. And if we react in this fear with stupid stuff, with our reactions, which can be found in question number 2, we're not thriving as parents. So listen to this. Let's see what is he going to do. What's his plan? Well, here's his plan. This is all in an email. I'm going to talk with her later today. Sounds like a really, really good decision. It sounds like a good decision because this man knows how to have a heart talk, be a proper listener, a proper speaker, before she leaves for the movie. And my hope is just to tell her I love her and I want to keep our communication open. Okay, good plan. Really good plan. Because what are you going to do? You're going to say something weird before she goes on her first date, right? You're going to give her a big speech about sex or pregnancy or kissing or touching or your fears before she goes on a date? You're not going to do that. Come on now. Ain't nobody got time for that. That thought ran by me. I told a parent, I gave almost a year ago, my oldest daughter was going to homecoming. Beautiful girl, beautiful, wonderful things. And I had this freaking thought that popped into my head. I need to give her a really good talk about boys and dancing and people touching her before she goes to her first homecoming dance. Man, thank God I didn't say anything about that. Come on. Talk about weird. Talk about ruining the vibe and ruining the attachment and the trust. If I were to say something weird like that, like the day of the dance, come on now. Thank God I didn't do that. So, and my hope is just tell her, keep the conversation open. Do you have any thoughts you have here? It would be greatly appreciated. I emailed them back, said, couple things, and I said, let's talk in Thursday Parent Club. Now the story is not over. The plot thickens. And then what you're about to hear in about 4 minutes is one of the most important things I've ever said in this Parents Club in about 4 minutes, okay? So hang tight. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I hope you're enjoying this story. So another email came in. Another facet to this story. Okay, another twist in the drama, okay? So my wife wants to come up with a contract for my daughter and discuss restrictions and consequences on her. Since she's now driving and she's more autonomous, okay? So see, the fear is coming out. The mom is afraid. The mom wants structure. She wants order. She wants predictability. On one hand, that makes sense. The world is filled with structure and order and predictability. On the other hand, is that a wise way to use our fears to build attachments? I can't answer this question because I do not know this daughter and I do not know this family. But I know it's a question we should all be asking. When do we really just move with our heart and teach with our heart? And when is it wise to bring in structure? Right? Like I just can't announce to my wife, hey, from now on, guys, or from now on, wife, I'm going to make a checklist for you and what you're doing and I'm doing. And then there's going to be consequences if you don't do that. See, why would we don't talk like that with our adult spouses, with our friends? But then we do talk like that with our children or with our young adults, like 17. There's a time and a place for that. I teach it in my videos, in my class for teaching structure. I call it the job description and love it. But usually people have that because they're doing that out of fear, and it's actually a symbol of a lack of trust, right? So the reason why I don't have a chore chart in my home, for example, is because I don't need one. Because my kids rock at their chores. I don't have to even remind them one time to do their chores. Sometimes we maybe tell them to do their chores, or we let them know that, hey, there's some poop that needs to be cleaned up, or hey, the dishwasher ready to be empty, but it's not reminding, there's no nagging. It's just such high amounts of trust. But I do not blame this mother for coming up to this because she's scared. And she has every right to be scared. It's really scary when your baby girl starts driving and going off on dates. Can I get an amen on that? All right. So see, I hope I'm learning from this. Like, I do not have all the answers. I'm learning as I go. And I'm learning from this story and the stuff that's coming out of my mouth. I hope you are too. Even thinking about, now listen to this. Okay, so now the 4 minutes is about 3 minutes away from now. Okay, now listen to what the dad says. Okay, so now the mom wants to come in with structure, predictability, but even thinking about writing that is hard for me. All right, why? Well, I think I know why. Maybe because of his personality. Maybe he has fears. What is he afraid of? Why can't you just write something? What are you afraid of? Well, maybe he's afraid because he knows that you should be afraid whenever you bring in that type of structure into your home. It could break the attachment. And good news, Mike, if you do want to share this with your wife, this is being recorded. And I hope that she's hearing this and she feels the love that I have for you, for her, for your family. And I hope that she's feeling attached and trusting with me. So even writing this, thinking about writing this is hard for me. I'm reluctant to put these contracts together. I don't even think they're useful. But I feel I need to make a compromise with my wife. So some rules have to be in place. And like how late she stays out, expectations of getting her schoolwork done. You know, my daughter can get distracted kind of easily and she can procrastinate. And I don't know if we don't put some rules or consequences in place. And if we didn't, she might really bomb out in school. All right. Here is, before I give you your coaching, the 4 minutes is almost there. Mike, do you have any, do you want to correct me at all? Or do you want to say anything real quick about what you've heard here today?
I think you stated it pretty well, Sean, and it's just basically, for me, maybe like you stated, I'm trying not to be fearful, and I stop myself anytime I get to that point. And like you said, the idea of telling your daughter when she's going off to her homecoming that she's got to avoid a boner or whatever, right? Coming at her is ridiculously hilarious and obviously not a good idea. So I stop myself whenever I do stuff like that. And, maybe some parents don't. And I just know how little value that adds and how limited the attention span is of a kid.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think you're hitting it pretty well. I'm just still unsure about, like, we did do a drive. I'll tell you one thing we did do, and we got this from the DMV. When she got her driver's license and she's driving by herself, right? We found a DMV publication that was sort of like the rules of driving. You don't have alcohol. You don't drive with friends that are drunk.
Yeah.
You don't, just general rules that are going to keep you from getting hurt, right?
Okay, sure.
And we gave her that, and I think that was reasonable because the responsibility of a car is, to a kid.
Yeah.
They don't understand the responsibility that they
No,
have.
it's super heavy, and partly why some teenagers crash their car, do stupid stuff, is because they're teenagers and they're dumb and their brains aren't developed. Yeah. And partly it's because they haven't had proper parental teaching and connection on that topic. So you're doing the best you can. Are you ready for me to give you some coaching and some advice on this? And then I'll give it to you, and then you tell me what you think about it. Are you okay?
Yep.
Now, this is not just for Mike in this situation. What I hope you hear my heart in this. And I hope you hear this is for me. This is for all of us. Let's all do this coaching that I'm about to give you. Okay, the first thing to do is remember is to take personal responsibility over our own self, our own actions, and our own mind and our own fears. Talk to yourself. Counsel yourself. Tell yourself what is really going on inside of me. Why I'm about to do this. Why I'm about to say this. Why I'm about to give her this document or punish her or react. Why? Talk to yourself. Mindfulness. Slow it down. Right? Remember, we cannot control these children, but we can control ourselves. And if you do not have this mindfulness, you don't have this ability, this pattern in your life, you're just going to be a walking reaction. Mike said some parents would have done that. Of course, I'm one of those parents, man. You are too. We would have reacted with avoidance, people pleasing, not saying anything, passive parenting, or we would have reacted with aggression, scolding, pep talks, whatever felt good to us, because both of those things are just selfish endeavors. And it actually doesn't build attachments or trust. Okay, the second thing that I want you to do is I coach you to talk about your fears with these two women in your life. Talk to them about your fears. Listen to them. Talk about their fears. Honor them. Hold them tightly. Make talking about fear a normal thing that happens in your home. About how you can react in fear. How you're managing your fear and partly how you manage it well is by talking to you, because you're 9 now, and I just want you to know this is what I feel sometimes. But you talk about it in an appropriate way, and this solves so many problems. Now, this is the part that I've been building up to. Is in this context, we almost all the time focus on building healthy attachments with our children. But in this situation, this husband is absolutely at a fork in the road with his own wife. Now, I'm using very dramatic language because I think it's true. Because essentially what his wife sounds like she's doing here is she's actually asking her husband, will you be there for me? Will you honor me? Do I have a voice in this marriage? Like, I know you don't want to do a contract, but I do. And so when Mike says, let's do a compromise, what I hear him saying is, I hear you, honey. And while I may not want to do that, I have fears around that. You have fears around that. So let's work together, because you're my equal partner. You're my equal partner, and I want to be there for you. I want us to train our minds. Train our minds that when we see our kids acting out, running to their bedrooms on a screen, screaming, being something salty, Train your mind to realize that that is a Russian child in a crib crying out for connection and attachment. Train your mind that when your spouse says, this isn't working for me, I don't like this hurts, I'm feeling disconnected, I don't like when you do this, I don't like when you say that. Train your mind to see them that they are a Russian baby, a child of God, a precious little child, crying out and saying, will you hold me tight? Will you be there for me? Am I alone? Or can I trust somebody to really hear me and acknowledge me? And it doesn't have to be all my way. I can work with you. My next piece of coaching for you, Mike, is then with your wife and with your daughter, develop a win-win dynamic. She's 17, and you can do that when she's 7 as well, or when she's 27, living in your basement because she's in med school for her 7th year and in $500,000 in debt. That was a joke. And then the goal here is trust. Honey, my wife, I want you to be able to trust me, that in parenting, it's not my way. That you can trust me. I'll be there for you when you cry out from that crib. You can trust me to come and hold you and be there for you. Daughter, I want you to know you can trust me. I'm not going to use my power poorly. I'm not going to break this boundary you have in your own independence in your own life. I know that I'm powerless and I love you and there's honor and there's boundary there where you can trust me that I'm going to be connected with you in a proper way. You're not alone in this world.